isolation. For complex trauma survivors, isolation is both a feeling and something that they tend to do in a way that can be maladaptive. So for trauma survivors, they can tend to self-isolate. Like Mandy, she gets a phone call and it's her friends, and they're like, hey, we're all going to go do such and such. And she hasn't seen them in a long time. But just that very thought of going out and socializing with them gives her anxiety. How is she going to act? What is she going to wear? Is she going to be judged? It's been a long time. She's not proud of what she's doing in her life. And as she starts thinking about all of these different aspects of what it could really mean to go out there and put herself out there and be amongst people, she decides to just decline the invitation. She's not declining the invitation because her friends are toxic. She's declining the invitation because she herself feels dysregulated by the very idea of getting together with those people. She's having social anxiety and she's afraid. When we isolate, we self-isolate because we're afraid of what it's going to mean to get out there and put ourselves out there and try to connect with people. This is a trauma response. So it's not in any way healthy for us to purposely isolate ourselves from other people. Now, is it good to cut ourselves off from those who are toxic? Well, of course. Of course. Once we recognize that someone is narcissistic, abusive, they're toxic toward our goals and our purposes, they're toxic toward our self-worth and our self-esteem, we do want to get away from them, even if that means that for some time we're going to have to be alone, not have someone in our life filling that position. It is the course of wisdom to get away from them. In that case, we would be isolating ourselves. But when isolation becomes maladaptive is when we're doing it as a coping mechanism to get past the anxiety and the stress of hanging out with people, like what Mandy was doing. Again, her friends were not particularly toxic. She was just afraid. And so as she hung up the phone, she immediately felt a release, like a relief, like, oh, good. I'm not going to have to go out there and figure out how to present myself. I'm off the hook. But as time started to go on, she started to feel like a sinking feeling. And the sinking feeling is that she intuitively realized that this is not a good way to live. Spending her entire life hiding from other people, trying her best to not get involved and turning down perfectly healthy invitations was not good. And so if you're a trauma survivor and you found yourself isolating as a way of keeping yourself safe, isolating as a way to deal with the emotional dysregulation, as a way to cope with the feeling that you're not going to be able to handle being around people, you need to take a pause right here. This is our moment to take a look at this symptom. It's the symptom of self-isolation. It can cause you to ghost friends, ghost family members, ghost love interests. You could have been having a good relationship with a relatively healthy person, guy, a gal that you really were into. And then you just started to become too anxious that they were going to hurt you, or too anxious that you were going to lose them. And as a result, what happens? Well, then you decide, I can't handle this. I can't take this. I got to get out of here. And you took the exit stage left and you just disappeared. Or you decided that you were going to ghost the person. And this was your way of just like keeping yourself safe. We don't have ill intent when we're self-isolating. It's just that it's a maladaptive coping mechanism, which is a fancy way of saying it's a way of handling a problem that causes more problems. It's not going to work for the long run. So why are we doing it? Well, we equate avoidance with safety, maladaptive thinking. Hey, if I just avoid everyone, then that will keep me safe. We don't want to be triggered. We're feeling triggered by the whole idea of having to go to an event or be around people. We've decided we can't trust any men or can't trust any women, or we don't want to have any relationships. But then the problem is relationships in general are necessary for life, right? So whereas I've taught in the past that we need to be able to be alone, right? We also need to be able to handle being around other people. We need both our life skills, right? So being alone is not the cure all to everything. We need to be able to be alone. For some people, it's just their trust issues. They're feeling like because of their past trauma, isolating themselves is a protective measure to avoid the risks of being in or being out there or in a relationship of some type. For others, the hyperarousal and the hypervigilance, if you've ever felt that, where your whole nervous system is on high alert, which keeps you in constant state of stimuli, that causes you to hate being around people because you're in constant hypervigilance. Like, what does that mean? What did that face mean? What is he doing? Why did he move his hand like that? Why is she shifting? Right? And when you're doing all that, it's kind of exhausting and you lose yourself. You don't even know how you feel except for scared. Speaking of scared, there's fear of rejection. One of the reasons why trauma survivors may avoid getting out there, being around people, is because they're afraid of being judged. They're afraid of being disliked. They're afraid of people leaving them, abandoning them, or rejecting them in some way, shape, or form. For some of us, it's our difficulty to express emotions that cause us to want to just not be around anyone. For some of us, we're carrying so much shame and guilt that we feel like we need to just isolate ourselves because everyone knows what happened to me back in the such and such, or everyone knows what I did, or everyone's thinking that I'm this or I'm that. For many trauma survivors, they experience a loss of identity. So since it disrupts their sense of identity, they isolate, and that gives them a sense of control and protection against the external influences that could make their identity fall apart, right? So they're figuring if I just stay home, I stay inside, then I don't have to lose myself, right? They have a fear of relationships. So it's very important that you don't have a fear of being alone, i.e., loneliness, codependency, but it's also important that you don't have a fear of relationships. And so that's what we're talking about today, that fear of relationships. Now, does that pertain to you? One of the things we have to do if we need to change this self-isolating, this fear of relationships, is first of all, get over that fear of loneliness, that fear of being alone, which can sound kind of counterintuitive. Like, how, if I get rid of the fear of loneliness, how is that going to help me to fix my fear of relationships? But the whole problem is our extreme thinking. So when we're codependent and we're afraid to be alone and afraid to be with ourselves, it's causing us to go to extremes when we're around people. Again, the fear of being alone is causing you to go to extremes when it comes to other people. So then you're going out there and you're putting on a whole show for them because you're afraid of being alone. Or you're taking the first person that you find and locking in on them only to find out they're abusive because you're afraid of being alone. Or you're hanging on to abusers because you're afraid of being alone. You're staying in relationships that you shouldn't be in too long because you're afraid of being alone. You don't set boundaries because you're afraid of being alone. You have to cure that. That's extreme, black and white, all or nothing thinking. We have to stop that. So how do we cure that fear of being alone? Well, when we are by ourselves or when we are feeling lonely, even if there's other people around, then we need to practice our reframing. When we're alone, we need to practice the reframing. So just picture it in your head right now. You walk in the house, you're going to go get some cookies and milk, and then boom, it hits you. The weight of loneliness, it just hits you. Oh my God. I'm alone. I'm alone in this house. I'm alone in this world. I don't have any friends. Why doesn't anyone love me? Right? And your mind starts spiraling like that. Like, what happened? What is wrong with me? You ever do that? There's got to be something wrong with me because I wouldn't be in this situation. And then we start to spiral down, down, down. So what do we got to do there? It's time to reframe immediately. As soon as we notice we're getting that pang of loneliness, that distress, we need to immediately reframe. I like using a pen and paper, and that's what I advise you do. But if you just got your head, then do that in your head. So to reframe it, we'll start with a propitious question. It's the immediate way that we can stop the rumination. Propitious question. Propitious question is a question that's asked for your benefit, a little bit grandiose. It's going to be to an extreme benefit of the self. You ready for it? Here's a propitious question you can ask yourself. Why is it actually amazing that I am alone right now? Why is it actually amazing that I'm alone right now? Now, it's a weird question to ask because you don't feel that way, but you're just posing a question for a discussion. But here's the thing. This is a hack because the way your subconscious mind works, as the AI computer system it is, when you feed it a question or a problem, it has to solve the problem and answer the question. Doesn't matter what you ask it. So we have to stop giving it detrimental questions and problems to solve. You see, when you say, why am I alone? Your subconscious mind says, well, you're a little ugly. Maybe your breath stinks. Maybe you could use to get better at this. Maybe nobody likes you. Maybe the problem was that you asked a detrimental question. You asked a detrimental question. The question was framed. It was innocent. You didn't mean to do it, but when you did it, you armed your subconscious against you. So the subconscious is like, it's just a computer system. It doesn't know to tell you, hey, don't do that. So it just says, well, we need to give him or her some answers. So it just starts spitting out negative things about you. Why do I suck? Right? Why am I so terrible? You say something like that, and your subconscious mind will just start answering the question. That's why we use propitious questions. And the propitious question is going to do the same thing in the subconscious mind, only now the subconscious mind is going to start doing things that are going to work towards your benefit and help you to switch and reframe. So now you say with a propitious question, you go, why is it amazing that I'm here by myself right now? And then all of a sudden, and your subconscious mind starts hitting you with propitious thoughts. Well, because right now, you wouldn't want someone around because you haven't made as much money as you want to make. And you wouldn't want someone around right now because you haven't lost all the weight you want to work and you haven't got your purpose going. And right now isn't a good time for a relationship because you're working on your healing. And right now you want to eat your milk and cookies. This isn't loneliness. This is freedom. This isn't loneliness. This is privacy. You are finally not being abused by anyone right now. And what happens when you start thinking like that? Well, at the very least, you can go and get your milk and cookies without spiraling into depression. But dare I say, you might actually start to feel better, even good. So what happened? Did we change the actual reality around us? No. We got inside the brain and we changed the way the mind was working with the use of propitious questions. Yeah, we're empowering ourselves against the systems, the programs that have been holding us down and holding us back. So utilize this tool, utilize this gift, propitious questions. So the first thing we got to do is reframe our mind around the idea of being alone. When we stop fearing being alone so much, we're no longer codependents. Now you're ready for relationships. Now you are ready for a relationship because you must go into a relationship with abundance mindset, not scarcity mindset. Can't go to a relationship with scarcity mindset. Oh my God, please don't leave me. Oh, I need you. You can't do that. No. All right. To give you an example, ladies in the room, just imagine a guy comes up to you and he slides on in and he wants to give you his best pickup line. And he says to you, I have nothing. I have no one. I am so alone. Will you please be with me? Because if you're not with me, then I'll have no one. But if you are with me, then at least I'll have something and I'll have someone. Please. If a guy approaches you like that, you're going to be like, oh my God, here is my number. I am so into you right now. Are you going to do that? Yeah, are you going to say, I bet you don't have a car either. Do you want me to give you a ride? Is that what you're going to do? So typically that's not going to feel attractive to you for a guy to approach like that, right? On the other hand, when you perceive that a fella's got some abundance about him, he walks in the room, he's confident, he's well dressed, right? He indicates some level of proficiency in his life that may have led him to have maybe a little bit of success as well. Other people tend to like him, so he tends to have other friends, both male and female, responding positively to him. Now, when you see him, right, manifesting abundance, now he's more attractive, right? So if he happened to talk to you in this case, because he has abundance, now you wouldn't mind being a part of that person's life. He has a better chance, right? But it's not just a male female thing, it's a universal thing. To he who has more, more will be given. To he who has less, even what he has will be taken away from him. It's the words of Jesus, Gospel of Matthew. Yes, if you have more, or you manifest that you have more, or you're thinking in abundance mindset, you will attract more to you. You will become more as a result. This is why we must think in propitious questions, and we must aggrandize the self just a little bit. This is why a successful person, before they ever become successful, is already saying things to themselves like, I am so successful. I am going to be so successful. They have nothing, but they're manifesting that abundance, right? And it really works, right? Remember on Oprah when Jim Carrey said he wrote himself a check for $10 million when he was broke and walked around with that check in his wallet, a $10 million check, because he believed he would have it. And by continuing to do that, he cultivated an abundance of the mind. And as a result, there did come a day where he got paid $10 million to do a movie. Does that mean it can work for you? This is a universal law. It's how the universe works. I'll tell you what doesn't work. Detrimental thinking. Oh, why don't I have? I don't. Why not? Why me? Right. That's just gonna attract us more lack. So we're gonna get more and more lack. Right. So it's our responsibility to reframe the paradigm around loneliness and be in abundance. Now, when you go and approach relationships from an abundance mentality, it's going to work out well for you. It's going to work out well for you, and you will get more abundance. So whenever I go into a new group of people, because I move a lot, right? Like a lot of you guys know, I moved to Florida, right? So you understand what that means. That means all new friends, right? That means all my old Chicago friends are still in Chicago, and I don't have any of them here. So I come here and I start completely fresh. And when I lived in California, I had to do the same thing, right? Start completely fresh. And when I lived in Brazil, you got to do the same thing. And when I lived in wherever, Thailand, you got to do the same thing. You got to start completely fresh wherever you go. So how does it work? I'll tell you what I do every single time. I pursue my interests, my goals, my hobbies, my purpose. And then there's people there who are also pursuing the same thing. And then I manifest abundance, which means that I show no desperation for a relationship. I show no desperation for a relationship. That's how you do it. And I show no desperation by cultivating that mindset of abundance in my head. It's just a matter of time. If I keep showing up here and I'm consistent and I manifest some proficiency at what we're doing here, it is an inevitability that people are going to start to know me. And when you know someone, then you can like them and trust them, but you have to know them first. And how can you know them if they don't show up? The only reason people don't like me and trust me here is because I have never been here before. Why would they like me? It's just that simple. And you see how this mindset actually it cultivates abundance so that the abundance will be manifest. It cultivates confidence so that I'm sitting there, I'm looking like a confident person. I'm not searching everyone's eyes, hoping for a connection. I'm just relaxed and doing whatever the activity is we're all here to do. And as a result, I will always get friends wherever I go. It is not instantaneous, I promise. Even for me, it is not instantaneous. You have to keep showing up. You have to just be consistent. But as they see you over a number of weeks, showing up at the same place, manifesting a level of proficiency and confidence, and you seem to be in abundance, you don't seem to be desperate for friends, people are like, hey, so what's your story? They start to become a little curious. They start asking you questions. All the meanwhile, of course, being friendly, right? We say hi and you talk openly when you get the opportunity, but you're not desperate for it. And see, this helps us to be more confident. Confidence helps us to be more attractive. And even as we start to get into these relationships, start to ask questions, we start to get discussions going. We don't have to press it. We don't have to be desperate. At any point in a relationship, don't be desperate. Naturally, the next stage of the relationship, information is going to be exchanged. Where you live in, here's my phone number. We should get together. And why don't you come to do that? Next thing you know, invitations start to get exchanged. Okay. Now, at this stage in the relationship, it's very important, again, that you manifest no desperation. Just because someone's given you their number doesn't mean you need to text them right away and get to the calling and relax. Just take your time. So when you're in abundance mindset, you realize it's all just a matter of time. It's all just a matter of time. And then as you go on into the relationship, you'll start to do things together and you'll start to have contact, and you will naturally find some connections, and you will naturally find a lot of people, in fact, the majority, that you do not want to connect with. Why? Well, because the majority of people don't have that much in common with you. They're not going to be on your same level, either economically or intellectually, or on your same level in terms of intensity on certain things or proficiency wise. It just depends on what it is you're doing and what it's all about. Besides that, some people are toxic. So some of these people are going to be potential abusers, narcissist takers, or persons who are manifesting too much desperation in their life. And as a result, they're not going to be a good match for you. That makes up all of what I named. It makes up the majority of the people. So only a small number of the people that you meet are going to be those good, long-lasting connections. And you're only going to know who those are through time and through connection, which means you have to face rejection, not run from rejection, not hide from rejection. You have to face it. Some of them are not going to like you. They're just not going to think you're that great. They don't like your jokes. This happens to every human. Every human is not liked by someone, right? Everyone is not liked by someone. But everyone also has some people that can mess with them. So you're looking for your tribe, right? And by looking, I mean, you're just being open for the connection. You're just making yourself available for the connection. And believe me, in the beginning, you may have to have your days where you're like, man, I didn't make any connections today, right? But over time, you will get more and more and more connections going. So how many connections do you need to make before you can find your best friend? I want you to think in terms of dozens. I want you to think in terms of dozens. So I don't want you going out there thinking you're going to meet 1 or 2, 3, 4 people, and the first person gives you their number, like, oh my God, maybe this is a friend. You're in desperation mindset. Don't do that. Oh my God, maybe this is a friend. No, you don't know. You don't know yet. You need to take your time. You need to meet lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of people. Ladies, if you're looking for a man, right? You're looking for a man. Don't just lock down on the first guy who shows you some interests and that you kind of think is okay. Don't lock down on him. Put him in the queue, right? You have one of those on your Netflix, like a queue where it's like I watch later. Like, these are the movies I want to watch. I want to watch this. I don't have time to watch it right now, but I want to watch it. You gotta have a queue of men, right? You just put them in a queue. You're not intimate with these men. You're just talking to them, and you go and put him here. And as soon as you meet another and put him here, I want you to have several different guys simultaneously that you are talking to. You're getting yourself trapped and stuck, and you are losing time going into one relationship with one dude for 6 years until you're like, I can't take it anymore. I'm in a relationship with a narcissist. That's a hard way to go. 6 years every time. It's gonna take you 70 years to find your one. right? So instead of giving each dude 6 years, let's just take some time and get 6 guys at once. And then we talk to 6 guys simultaneously. What are we doing here? Abundance. We need to work through the numbers. If you want to know how to get connections, you need to work through the numbers. Okay. So again, what are we doing? We're getting rid of our fear of being alone by reframing. And what I'm teaching you here is skills, relationship skills, so that you can go out and make friends and meet people. You don't need to be desperate. You don't need to be afraid. You can make connections, make lots of connections. Don't expect them to go somewhere. Only some will be your troopers. Only a few people will be your day ones, your diehards, your ride or dies. It's not going to be everyone. It's not going to be everyone. Is this making sense? So the other thing that's going to arm us well to be able to get out there and stop self-isolating is having the ability to establish boundaries. Many times trauma survivors don't put themselves out because they don't know how to set boundaries. So they know that putting themselves out there means that they are going to get used, abused, violated, and mistreated, and what's the word I'm looking for? You're going to be used, abused, violated, mistreated, unappreciated. So by means of discussion here, and you can just raise your hand, I'm going to ask this question to see if we have a good sense of boundaries, okay? So no doubt by now you've taken my boundaries course or the Adapt Healing course, and you've learned about boundaries. So let's put your knowledge to the test. And if you haven't done that, maybe you've been coming to the meetings, and so you know about boundaries. So here's the question. When it comes to setting boundaries, what is my definition of a boundary? When it comes to boundary setting, what is Roman's definition of a boundary? A boundary is what?
It's a rule you make for yourself.
Very good. A boundary is a rule or a limitation that you set. A boundary is a rule or a limitation that you set. This is very important. You have to understand what it is in order to have good boundaries and be able to make connections. Okay. A boundary is a rule or limitation that you set. You can set rules and limitations over your own behavior. Those are your personal boundaries. You can set rules and limitations over your thoughts, over what you say. You can also set rules and limitations over other people's behavior. Based on what authority? Based on what authority? Well, because all of us are kings and queens of something. Does anyone know what all of us are kings and queens of? Each of us have authority over something. What is the thing that we have authority over?
You have authority over yourself, and you are your own sovereign nation and your resources.
Perfect. Someone's been doing their homework. Yes. Yeah. You have authority over yourself and your resources. Write it down. Make sure you got it. This is so important. You have authority over yourself, and so I can govern someone else's behavior because I have authority over my resources. But before I can explain how I can govern someone else's behavior, I need to understand what my resources are. This is crucial right now. We got 100 people here on the edge of their seats. What are our resources? Who's got it? What are our individual resources? What are our resources?
Time, energy, space.
Nailed it. Excellent, Devin. Your time is one of your resources, one of the most valuable ones. Your energy is one of your resources. Your personal space is one of your resources. Your body is one of your resources. Your beauty is one of your resources. Your money and your physical resources, like your car, your house, anything that belongs to you, Those are your resources. Your children are one of your resources. Your animals are one of your resources, right? So again, your time, your energy, your personal space, your body, your beauty, your talents, your yes, people said your mind, right? Anything that belongs to you. Good. Now, here's the thing to understand. Your resources are valuable. There are people who want them, and that never occurred to you because you never saw yourself. But now understand there's people who want your resources. They want access to your resources. That's not always wrong, but they need to pay. It's not wrong that people want your resources because your resources are valuable, but they need to pay, meaning they just can't come in and take them without your permission. Okay, you can give them for free, but they have to have your permission. Does that make sense? They can't just take your time. They can't just take your space. They can't just take you access to your body. They can't just take access to your looks. They can't just take access to your presence. They have to have your permission. It is on this authority and your authority to remove your resources that we have the ability to govern other people's behavior. This is something that's not understood in the mental health community. They get all upset. They go online and they go, this person tried to tell someone else how they could act in a relationship. And yeah, you can do that. You can do that. Let me demonstrate how this works. Somebody steps foot in my house. It's a relative. They come over to my house. And I say, excuse me, I need you to take off your shoes when you come in my house. What is that? That's a boundary. I created a boundary. Why is it bad? It's a rule or a limitation that I created. Who am I talking to? Other people. I'm telling them what they have to do. Whoa, can I tell other people what to do? Yes. Why? Because it involves my resources. It's my house. What is the authority on which I can enforce this boundary? It's my house. I can remove my resources, or in this case, kick them out. It's based on that authority. So how does this devolve? Well, if they say, no, I'm not going to take off my shoes, which would be so dumb, right? And disrespectful. And then I would say, since you're violating one of my boundaries, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. If they say, no, I don't want to leave, right? Then how is this going to devolve? Eventually, I will call the police. And guess what will happen when the police arrive? Guess what will happen when the police arrive? This is a crazy thing about life. The police, get this, are going to enforce your boundary. Did you know that? If someone violates your boundary, you get to call the police. And this is just about every country in the world. You can call the police and the police will come and enforce your boundary. You'd be like, that guy's not obeying my boundaries. I told him to leave me alone, stay out of my personal space, and he kept coming in my personal space. And the police was to be like, that guy went in your personal space, and they will arrest that guy. That is how powerful your boundaries are. You are a king. You are a queen. Recognize this. All of your boundaries work this way. That guy touched my body and he didn't have my permission. You touch his body, and the police start beating him up. Well, that's some countries. not in the United States. They don't beat you up as much. Well, sometimes. That's a whole nother discussion, right? So understand this is the level of power you have. Anything that involves your resources, you can make rules over not just your own behavior, but other people's behavior. So can you tell someone they have to stop smoking? Yes. Even when you're not around, they have to stop smoking? Yeah. You can govern other people's behavior, but on what authority? On access to your resources. So you can say, hey, listen, I don't want to be in a relationship, meaning give access to my body and my space to someone who's a smoker. You can say that. That's your rules. It's up to you. And they have to be like, really, I have to stop smoking even when you're not around? And you could be like, yeah. And someone could be like, well, you're being controlling. That's fine. They can call you that if they want, but you're the king, you're the queen. It's your resources. Isn't that amazing? Feel the power. Just let the power surge through you. Understand who you are, what you are. You have the ability to decide. And if the person says, well, I don't want to stop smoking, that's their prerogative. You say, I respect that, sir. You're a king and queen of your stuff. However, I'll be removing access to my personal space and my time and my body over here until you're done smoking. You understand how that works? You respect it. That's good. Do you? As you do your thing, I'm going to do my thing over here. And then once you meet my qualifications, I may decide to, again, give you access. You get to decide. Hopefully that's making sense with the boundaries. So now we know what they are. Now, another question for you. Asserting boundaries. When can we assert boundaries? Is it too late after a certain point?
I love this one. The moment you feel violated, you don't have to have it preset. The moment you feel a violation to your boundaries or to yourself, you set a boundary.
Perfection. Did everyone hear that? Turning up the volume over here. She said, the moment you feel a violation, your feelings, the feelings are your indication when you need to set a boundary of some sort. It's the feelings. So when you don't feel good about something someone's doing, then you can speak up and set a boundary. Can I make any rule? Yeah, you can make any rule at any time. It's never too late. So right, if a woman is with the guy and the guy starts pressing up on her and she doesn't say anything, he starts kissing her and doesn't say anything, and they start getting undressed and doesn't say, at any point she can stop and say, stop, I don't want to do this anymore. And he has to stop by law at any time. Do you understand? That's how it works. So therefore, that's how it works with all of our boundaries. At any time, you can just decide. It could have been your mom always comes over at a certain time, and one day you could just be like, I don't want you coming over anymore at this time. It doesn't work for me. At any time, you can express a boundary. It is never too late. It is never too late. It can be a retroactive boundary. Somebody violated you, but it's already done, right? So you go, well, I don't want that to happen again. And then you go, you know what? What happened the other day? Never again. It's a retroactive boundary, right? It's based on something that already happened. So very good. So now we've established what boundaries are. We've established how to set boundaries, right? And then finally, enforcement. The enforcement for the boundaries, just like with nations, you enforce your boundaries. Well, I'll open it up for question. Let's see if you guys got it. How do you enforce a boundary? Ultimately, how do you enforce the boundary? You've already stated it. You told them, hey, don't do this. And then they still want to do it. Well, how do you enforce it? How do you bring down the hammer on somebody who violates the boundary?
You enact the consequences that you stated when you when you verbally set the boundary, or you could cut them off.
You say come off?
Or you could cut them off.
Cut them off. Very good. So just like you got to think like nations, like you are your own sovereign nation. When a nation doesn't want to go the nuclear route and bomb someone, they use something called sanctions. And sanctions are saying, well, you don't get any of our resources anymore. That's what nations do, right? You do the same thing. When someone violates a boundary, you need to remove access to your resources once they're not respecting that boundary. You get to decide at any time when you enforce, by the way. Again, you will enforce your boundaries by removing access to your resources. Are there times when it has to get a little bit rougher than that? There are. Sometimes someone could have you cornered, physically cornered, where you would have to lash out and hit them so that you can remove access to your resources. If someone is extreme in certain ways, you may have to call the police so that the police can be your enforcer. And that's why we have police, so that we don't have to get violent all the time. But if it's a situation where you can call the police, then you may have to do that if they continue to violate a boundary, if they're not showing respect for your boundary. So even if it's our mom or our dad, yes. Unless you're a minor, yeah. We have to remove access to our resources, and even be willing to call the police on our own relatives if they're not showing that respect. As a result, they will learn respect, and they will not continue to cross that line, because they will see, whoa, this person's serious, and you will live in your own paradise. Why? Because people won't be constantly trying you. And now guess what? You're not afraid to go out and make connections. Why? Because you know how to set boundaries. And if a guy or a gal gets too much with you, you know how to say, hey, stop. I'm just going to set a rule right here. Don't do this anymore. Making sense? And you know how to enforce it. So we don't have to be afraid. So hopefully these relationship skills have kind of helped us here.